Support for this podcast comes from the law firm of Davis Malm. Whether you're a developer, property owner, manager, or commercial tenant, their real estate attorneys know the lay of the land, not just the law. Learn more at davismalm.com.
WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. Alvin Buyinza, welcome to The Common.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome back, I should say. This is your second time on The Common.
It is my second time.
Sweet, sweet. And you come to us as a reporting fellow for MassLive.
Mm-hmm.
And you have been reporting a story about the U.S. Supreme Court's coming decision on two cases concerning affirmative action.
Yes.
Or what's also known as race-conscious admissions.
Yes.
Can you break down what exactly is race-conscious admissions, affirmative action, as it relates to this case?
Right. Race-conscious admissions is really a practice where colleges and universities are taking into consideration the applicant's background. This is because, as we know, race in America, everybody's not on an equal playing field. Histories of racial segregation, histories of racial inequality, social inequality on race have really deterred and hindered many Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, people of color in general. And so what colleges are doing is they take in consideration these racial barriers as a way to kind of level the playing field.
Okay.
And to consider that.
Okay. And so tell me about these two cases that the Supreme Court is weighing right now, because I understand Harvard is involved in one of them.
Yes. So in 2014, the Students for Fair Admissions, it's a conservative nonprofit, they filed a lawsuit against Harvard University and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. The plaintiffs claimed that the two elite colleges' usage of race-conscious admissions policies were racially discriminatory. The SFFA claims that Harvard University's admissions policies, they discriminated towards Asian Americans, while the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill violated the 14th Amendment. Both of these colleges have defended themselves, okay? So they've stated before that although they do consider race as one of the many factors in a student's applications, they never solely rely on race. In 2019, a district judge in Boston had ruled in favor of Harvard University, saying the university did not discriminate against Asian Americans. However, the Students for Fair Admissions decided to appeal that lawsuit. It went up to the First Circuit, which also ruled in favor of Harvard University. So two lower courts have ruled in favor of Harvard University. Meanwhile, a district court in North Carolina also ruled in favor of UNC at Chapel Hill. So we have two lower courts that really are ruling in favor of these elite schools. However, the Students for Fair Admissions had continued to petition this all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States.
All right. Do we have an idea of how the Supreme Court is going to rule on this?
So a lot of journalists, a lot of legal scholars and experts do believe that the majority Supreme Court of the United States would rule against race-conscious admissions. And this is based on the discussion that they had about it last summer, where they expressed skepticism over the practice.
And to be clear, we're talking about a court that is heavily conservative. Out of 9 judges, 6 of them are conservative-leaning.
Yes, they're conservative-leaning. Now, there is some nuance into what they would consider. So we have, Chief Justice John Roberts. He did wonder if it would be possible if an applicant could talk about race in their essay, kind of give a statement on race. But you also have other justices like Justice Brett Kavanaugh. He said he wondered if there were race-neutral alternatives.
Okay, so we have these two cases, one involving Harvard University here in the Boston area, right? Tell me, what will our college campuses look like here if affirmative action is basically struck down?
Well, if the Supreme Court of the United States decides to end race-conscious admissions, it's going to be a lot harder for these elite colleges to really pull in Black and Hispanic students of color in general. The primary key thing that distinguishes these elite colleges, the MITs, the Boston Universities, Boston Colleges, Tufts, Harvards, from other colleges is that they're known for their incredibly low acceptance rates. So they're already pulling in a very small group of applicants. And so these elite schools really, really rely on race-conscious admissions to make sure that the small pool of students that they're accepting into their class, they do reflect the racial demographic of the country. You know, they don't want to have a racially homogenous student body. They want a diverse student body that is competitive and selective. There was an economist, David Card, on the behalf of Harvard University. He actually did a study, and he based it on the class of 2019 data from Harvard University. And he found that if there was a ban on race-conscious admissions, the Black and Hispanic population at the school would dramatically decline. So according to his study, what he found is the Black student population would decrease from 14% to 6%, while the Hispanic population would decrease from 14% to 9%. And white and Asian student body would increase.
Okay, I want to take a step back and ask you about the mechanics of how race-based admissions works, because I'm assuming that it's not just these administrators at these schools get the applications and they look and they say, okay, who's Black, who's white? You know, there's more to it than that, right? Race is one of many things considered when accepting students, right?
Yes. So, a lot of the universities, what they're doing is a holistic review, whereas you have a Black applicant, they do consider their race, but they're also considering their academics. They're also considering the extracurriculars they're in, the sports that they did, their essay, the SAT scores, all the other factors. I think it would be pretty naive for people to say that race doesn't factor in to what your experience was like in this country. And so these colleges that are using race-conscious admissions, what they're really doing is that they're saying, hey, we understand how your racial background, you being a Black person, you being Hispanic, you being Arab, you being Native American, we understand how that affected your experience in this country. We understand there's certain tailwinds that you went through, and we want to be able to consider that because, it's true, we're not all on an equal playing field in this country, but in order to get us to that, we do need to consider the different type of experiences everybody has.
Right.
So that's what race-conscious admissions is. That's how it kind of factors out.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Politics has never been stranger or more online, which is why the politics team at Wired is making a new show, Wired Politics Lab. It's all about how to navigate the endless stream of news and information and what to look out for. Each week on the show, we'll dig into far-right platforms, AI chatbots, influencer campaigns, and so much more. Wired Politics Lab launches Thursday, April 11th. Follow the show wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back. So, what are the alternatives? If it gets struck down, do universities have another way to increase or maintain diversity among their student population?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and some universities have done that. So there is race-conscious admissions, but then there's also something called class-conscious admissions. And the idea behind class-conscious admissions, and you're seeing a lot of articles and a lot of discussion on it recently, is that instead of focusing and giving preferential treatment on race, we should do that on class. And the argument is that, if we give preferential treatment to lower-income students, we can also diversify our campus because we have income gaps that are racial and wealth gaps that are racial. It's an idea that on paper does work, but in practice, there's some issues in it. So one of the biggest examples of the issues with class-conscious admissions, a lot of education scholars point to the University of Michigan. In 2006, Michigan decided to end race-conscious admissions practices in the entire state. And this disproportionately affected the elite schools. So what the elite schools decided to do is that they said, okay, let's pull in and heavily focus on low-income students. And rightfully so. I think colleges should be focusing on low-income students. However, the problem is that you can't substitute class with race.
Right.
That doesn't work. And so what happens is Black student enrollment in 2006 at the University of Michigan was at 7%. And despite the fact that the University of Michigan has focused so heavily on pulling in low-income students, they still have not been able to get that same level of Black student enrollment they saw in 2006. Currently, as of 2021, the Black student enrollment at the University of Michigan is around 4%. For a lot of education scholars, that's like a cautionary tale. You can't substitute class with race.
Yeah. Okay, so now if they get rid of race-based admissions, diversity is expected to drop noticeably, right? And then you have this class-conscious admissions that doesn't seem to yield anywhere near the same results as race-based admissions. This all looks kind of dire. Mm-hmm. Did you talk to any students to get their feelings about all of this?
Yes, I spoke to a remarkably impressive young woman, Abyssinia Hale. She goes to Minneshaug Regional High School. That's in Wilbraham. Mm-hmm. And what she says is that she fears with this Supreme Court of the United States decision is that it won't really reflect or understand the intersectional identities. So, we live in intersectional identities where it's not just race, it's not just class, we're whole people. And if the Supreme Court decides to strike down affirmative action, the intersectionality of people's identities aren't going to be considered. She's a Black student at a predominantly white high school, and she lives in somewhat of an affluent community. Mm-hmm. Under class-conscious admissions, even though we have a Black student who goes to a predominantly white school and she has incredibly excelled academically, she's at the top of her class, she would be the first family to go to college. Under class-conscious admissions, she would actually be disadvantaged, mm-hmm. even with all the tailwinds, because being from Wilbraham, which is, according to U.S. Census data, the median income is around $120,000 a year, she would not be in that low income bracket. So, that's kind of the problems with it. We're not understanding the intersectionalities of people's identities, that she's a Black girl, she grows up in Wilbraham, but that doesn't mean that she doesn't have struggle.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Are there any ways college campuses can mitigate the impact of an affirmative action ban?
So I've tried to get in touch with a lot of colleges just to kind of pick their brain to see, what are you guys kind of preparing? Unfortunately, mum's kind of the word for a lot of colleges. They're not really coming out and saying anything. But I did talk to James Murphy. He's the deputy director at Education Reform Now. It's an education policy think tank. And one of the things that Murphy had said to me is that, he expects that colleges are going to continue try to diversify their class through more of these race-neutral alternatives. But he also had the bold question of, what are the really big steps that these elite colleges are going to take to be able to diversify this class? One of the things he said that elite colleges can do is end legacy admissions. Legacy admissions is a really, really powerful and strong tool schools like Harvard University use.
That's where, say, if your dad went to Harvard, then his son or daughter can go to Harvard, basically.
You have a little bit more of a leg up.
Yeah.
Amherst College, all the way in Western Massachusetts, made headlines in 2021 because it was one of the sole elite schools. So this is a school with 11% acceptance rate. It decided to end legacy admissions because they said that it inadvertently limits educational opportunity.
Okay, so that's very recent. So I guess it'll take some time.
It'll take some time to see, what are the results of that. But, that's kind of a bold step. And it kind of puts a little bit of pressure on more of elite schools to say, if we're doing it, it's time for you guys to do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, when should we expect the Supreme Court's decision?
It could be any day now, but media reports do show that it could be towards the end of June. That's when we would see what the Supreme Court of the United States would say.
Okay. Well, Alvin, thank you so much for coming through to The Common and talking to us about this.
Thank you so much for having me, Daryl.
That's Alvin Buyinza, reporting fellow for MassLive. And that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening to The Common. Tell us how you feel about this pending Supreme Court decision. Give us a shout. Hit us up on Instagram at WBUR The Common, or send us an email at thecommon@wbur.org. I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.